It's the sick show. It's the sick show.
It's the sick show.
Hey, welcome everybody. Hey, today I've been thinking about this just kind of my experience with human human interaction. And I've really looked at, how do I present these ideas that I have about human interaction, communication, um, you know, working with people, understanding people, and being able to better communicate ideas across the spectrum of human interests and experiences. And a lot of the things that I've come across in, I don't know, the past, uh, gosh, 30 years, 30 plus years, and more than that. I mean, throughout our whole lives, but specifically on a professional level for me, since at least 1999. So the past 25 years professionally, I have interacted with people on a daily basis in some respect. And in 2010, I was introduced to an idea by Tammy Conwell at Ivy Tech in Muncie about multiple intelligences. And this person, this cognitive psychologist named Howard Gardner, and his theory of multiple intelligences, debunking the myth of a single intelligence, discussing the limitations of traditional IQ tests and how they don't capture the full spectrum of human intelligence, and looking at all these different things that all started to make sense for me as to why we struggle to communicate with one another, our ideas. Now, don't get me wrong, there are times we come across someone and it just clicks and it makes sense, and we are able to share our ideas with another person very easily. And it's like, you always talk about, you guys are just, you're in the pocket with one another, you're in the zone, whatever, and it just makes sense. And thinking of that, I look back over all this time that I'd spent working with people, as a salesman, and then as a collector and a repo person, and then becoming an educator and using those experiences that I had working with people on a daily basis, either selling them a car or collecting, a payment for that car. And it really made sense to me through all those thousands of people that I'd interacted with, and um, tens of thousands of people over that span of time. The 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 close proximity of interacting with someone, either as a sales rep or as a collector, and working through issues with them to help come to a common goal. I really didn't understand everything that I thought I understood. And but I realized pretty early on that each person approached things differently. Each person was, and I'm air quoting, turned on by something different than the next person would be. Uh, I realized that some people were excited about art. I realized some people are not excited about art. I realized some people were excited about the mechanics of a car. Some people were excited about the looks of a car, the comfort of the car, the space inside the car, all these different things. I never really understood why. And then I was introduced to Howard Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences. And in this, he's exploring 8 intelligences. So Dr. Gardner dives into each intelligence: the linguistic, logical, mathematical, the musical, the body kinesthetic, spatial, interpersonal, intrapersonal, and the naturalist, with real life examples. And once I was introduced to this idea, I was a little bit mind blown, man. It was like all of a sudden all these experiences that I had had over the years, whether it be, uh, in my professional work or just as a young person, learning, growing, and becoming, an adult, that all of this, all of this information, all this data that I'd gathered during that time, now I was starting to understand why some of the ways that I would communicate with one person wouldn't work with another person, why some people were excited about something other people were not. And it's really interesting. It's not specific to where, nope, only one of those will work. So if you're only, of the musical intelligence, that's it. That's all you get. No, we cross so many lines with these, and they cluster to where we have a component of each. Just some of them really are on fire compared to the others. So this way of looking at multiple intelligences that Gardner uh, started to develop was was a different way of looking at education. In the field that I was studying, he was utilizing it for application in education and exploring how understanding multiple intelligences can create a more inclusive and engaging learning environment. And it does. And folks, for those that have been in the classroom, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You're sitting here going, yep, yep. For those that have multiple children, you're seeing that as well. You're going, oh yeah, that makes sense. No wonder my kids are so different. The same parents, but very different interests, very different things that get them excited. This goes beyond academics. He discusses the importance of multiple intelligences in various careers and life skills. And I'm thinking of it, and I'm still looking at it from an educator's vantage point or a parent's vantage point. Um, but now as um, you know now back working in the private sector again, I'm seeing it in a whole different realm where I'm using um, all those experiences I had as a teacher now to place furniture in a room, and I'm thinking about these kids and how they learn, and not only that, how the teacher best best teaches. The environment that they're trying to create, the culture they're trying to create in their classroom, having that background is critical. Just the knowledge of it is such a big piece. Uh, if we're able, or if we're going to reach a richer culture, you know, um, a rich in contrasting values, we have to recognize the whole gamut of human potentialities. I think potentialities is a real word. Uh, I don't think I made that one up. And so we weave a less like arbitrary social fabric, one in which each diverse human gift will find a fitting place. And that's what we're seeking here. So individuals should be encouraged to use their preferred intelligences in learning, no matter if they're you know your your young child or if there's someone that an adult learner. We're all living this life learning on a daily basis. We're all lifelong learners. Some of us are much more intentional about it than others, but at some level every one of us is a lifelong learner. And the activities that should appeal to different forms of intelligences comes across in this intelligence theory. So teacher friends, think about the assessment of learning and how that assessment of learning should measure multiple forms of intelligence. Let's take, for instance, let's think about a musical intelligence. These are folks who just take to, maybe instruments or rhythm or beat or singing something that, it just makes sense to them. It clicks. This capacity, the capacity to think musically. to hear patterns and recognize them, and then not only recognize them, but manipulate them too. I think I stuttered a little bit. So the activities and the demonstrations involving musical intelligence could like include writing and or performing music or songs, contributing to musical productions, a podcast person, analyzing musical compositions and performances, and but people don't necessarily need to have musical talent to possess or like demonstrate musical intelligence. Many individuals are just deeply affected by music's patterns and understand them, and it hits them in a deep way. Even though the same people cannot always create or reproduce, music in some, logical way, they're able to grip it, understand it, and and it moves them in some way. I was told early on when I first started singing, had someone tell me that I had great timing, that I understood timing. And I was singing a song that I didn't know very well. I'd maybe heard it before, but I didn't know the song really well. And when I came in, I was on beat, but I was off maybe a half measure or something. So even though I could place lyrically, I could place everything where it needed to be, but for the way that song was written, I was not I was not following along. So you know, that was something that I never really thought that um, I was that talented of a singer, but I understood timing. I understood the delivery um, for 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 lyrics. I understood the patterns of the beats, things like that. I wasn't a greatly talented musical person, but I understood it. And that's what I mean, like when I was saying earlier, that you can cross a lot of these. Now, interpersonal, that came very easy to me from the beginning. I totally get interpersonal relationships. I totally understand um, the just the being able to communicate with others, and that's something that I never struggled with. And I was always interested in learning more about it. It's kind of why Gardner's theory comes so gets me so excited, is because I I want to know more about how I interact with people. And one of the things that I think about a lot is I become frustrated communicating with my wife because I feel like I communicate with others so well, and when we don't communicate well together, I feel like that I have to I shouldn't struggle with communicating with my best friend. I shouldn't struggle communicating with that person that's so important in my life, but maybe that's the reason for it at the same time. So, there I am analyzing it and thinking about it and using, um, my intrapersonal component. Once again, we're crossing over, and that interpersonal component of, understanding one's own self, one's interests, one's abilities, likes and dislikes, and just how the activities and things that I want to be involved with, could reacting to papers, reacting to writings or podcasts or things people say, people's viewpoints, career exploration. God knows I've had career exploration, folks. Just things like that. So I'm also very interested in, you know, how how and why clearly. So we cross so many of these um, as individuals, and that interpersonal piece is the just understanding other people and how they think, feel, or act, and activities, and um, you know working in that human dynamic. And I'm not real interested in um, politics. Could certainly be one of them. It's not something that I'm greatly interested in. There's a lot about politics it's just so messy. But group projects, hell to the yeah, let's go. I'm interested. So things like that could be someone that's very interested in or have this interpersonal um, intelligence that is shining through. Or some people understand math. Some people it just clicks. Tommy Simison, former guest teacher of the year, like that guy's incredible. He understands math and he has a capacity to understand the underlying principles of different types and kinds of causal systems and the capacity to manipulate, quantities and operations and describe the aspects of systems and, within mathematics. And he creates activities and demonstrations for his students that involve like logical mathematical intelligence, and awakening that in people and finding that fire that uh, it, maybe someone hasn't quite explored quite deeply yet, but he finds a way to explain that to kids. And I hate talking about test scores, but the guy gets kids excited about math, and it shines through on what he does on a regular basis. And I've seen other teachers do it too, uh, at multiple locations and in different ways, not just by their charisma, but just through their determination, um, to find that fire within a kid, to understand it at a deeper level, even if it's not something that comes natural to them. So there are people that cross over these, and that would be an interpersonal or an intrapersonal ability shining through for someone to be able to explain something to another that they just wouldn't naturally gravitate towards. So um, these folks that understand math and it makes sense to them, uh, Tim Clegg, that guy, like, he just gets it. It just makes sense. It's like all I see is gears turning in his head when there's a discussion about numbers in some way, shape, or form. So and that's exciting to me. I want to know more about that. Like people who are good at sports and dance, or like I don't know, ergonomics, things like that. These spatial intelligence people, they're kind of art smart in a way. They have a capacity um, in the spatial world that I don't know that I really have. Um, it might be a navigator, a sculptor, a chess player. You know, these people that can go through a Sudoku, whatever you call it, Sudokai. What I don't even know what it's pronounced. I like playing them, but I wouldn't say that I'm great at it. I'm decent, but and then there's sculptors that understand how something happens in space. Imagine the person that built the Eiffel Tower, the intelligences they had to have to understand how that would look in that space. They're sitting in the park one day in Paris. Oui. I don't speak any French. I don't know if that's appropriate, if it's some kind of cultural appropriation I just did there. I apologize if it offended. But that person had to be sitting there thinking about the Eiffel Tower for quite some time, or maybe it was an epiphany. Maybe it just they were sitting there one day in the park and they looked over and said, "Holy shit, I could put a tower right there." Just all these interlinking pieces of metal and create this fabulous tower that people would talk about all over the world for centuries to come. You know, so when Eiffel was doing that and creating that, he had a very spatial, highly engaged spatial intelligence. Just demonstrating um, this ability to construct something that was, um, I don't know what the function of the Eiffel Tower really is. I really don't. I don't know if there's an actual function for it other than it's cool. Because it is cool, but I don't know if there's a real function outside of that. But you know, other people that have spatial intelligence could create maps or representations. One of my favorite classroom activities that we did when I was a teacher was to create the the map of Gettysburg, and the kids would all have different jobs to do. There was maybe 30 different jobs that was involved in this full scale 130 kid project over a 2-3 week period, building the grounds of day two of Gettysburg. And um, some kids weren't interested in the artistic part of it. They weren't interested in, making um, making it look pretty. They weren't interested in how to create a hill or to make things look like rocks or trees or whatnot. But they were interested in other components like building the website that went along with it, or um, understanding the disposal of the dead at Gettysburg. Boy, that's a whole podcast in itself. So these people with spatial intelligence understand how things operate in space, how city planners, man, anybody, there's a game, I can't remember the name of it now. Gosh, that's terrible. I should really probably research this stuff before, but it just came to my mind. So I don't know how I research for something that's, going to come up in a learning opportunity. And anyway, there was a game, Sim City, and I was terrible at it. Just it was interesting to me, but I was just terrible at it. I knew that probably wasn't my best. And I think I may have gotten ahead of myself a moment ago when I said something about um, athletics and spatial, but you do have to have a spatial understanding if you're an athlete as well. But that falls more under the body kinesthetic intelligence, this idea that using one's whole body or parts of it, hands, fingers, arms, etc., to solve problems, make things, or put on some kind of production, and that falls into the art as well. The spatial, you have to be able to manipulate in some way, but this just some kind of demonstration of body kinesthetic intelligence could include physical activities and games and interpretive dance. Basketball players are certainly someone there. I mean, to be able to shoot a basketball, the amount of um, muscle memory that requires. I mean, think about the math of shooting a free throw or a 3 pointer on the run. Watch these guys, these NBA players, run down the court full speed, and they're world class athletes. I mean, I, there's not a whole lot of other sports um, where you are on the entire time. You play both offense and defense. I don't like. I've watched a lot of sports. I've coached a couple. Basketball is probably the one where, and somebody correct me. I know there's got to be something else. I'm not excluding others. I'm just telling you my experience, my anecdotal experiences. But basketball players have a great understanding of their spatial, that kinesthetic intelligence, knowing how to shoot the 3 pointer is pretty incredible. Just shoot it, like go out there, and if you're not a basketball player, go to the park and borrow a basketball from a kid and just try and do a layup. Have them videotape you, and then you watch it. I know if somebody recorded me, and I can shoot a layup, but I'm not consistent with it. God, I'm still terrible at it, right? The understanding one has to have to play that game is pretty incredible. So and those folks fall under many other things. There are so many people that are extremely talented. There was one they highlighted on the news the other day that they were talking about. He was a professional basketball player. He played basketball at Virginia Tech or somewhere, and was also a volleyball player, maybe in high school or something. But played professional basketball for 8 years, and made the Olympic beach volleyball team. He and his partner made the beach volleyball team for the Olympics for the United States 8 years after his last basketball game, I think. So he finishes playing basketball professionally and then starts playing professional volleyball. and now he's going to the Olympics with his volleyball teammate. That's incredible. Just crazy. Then you have these folks that can talk, and there are times when I feel like I could fall into that. There are times when I'm like, I have no talent whatsoever. I have no verbal intelligence. The thing that is coming out of my mouth is absolute garbage. But most of the time, I feel pretty confident about what I'm about to say next, or at least my ability to navigate verbally through this world, through my life, um, and express my in my native language. And some people can do it in multiple languages. I think, um, man, oh gosh, I can't remember his name now. It's just terrible. One of those other things just coming to mind all of a sudden. But he was a Duke basketball player that spoke like 6 languages. And I had a professor at Ball State, Dr. Thompson, that spoke multiple languages, and he taught the history of Western civilization. And every once in a while, he'd break out in French or Spanish or Russian or these different languages, German, and he understood how to communicate through multiple ways. He was very worldly. His dad was a diplomat, and just very good at communicating and expressing himself through his native language and through non-native languages that I'm sure he learned as his dad traveled the world. And he was also I think he may have been a professional bicyclist. He bicycled all over Europe. But these folks that have a linguistic intelligence have this ability to express themselves and understand how others communicate using language. And this is something where I think it crosses over a lot with interpersonal, and probably intrapersonal. These folks probably have those three things just blinking hard all the time, in their brains and their abilities, um, because they all go together so well. But you know, folks who have this are also really good writers. They're poets. They give speeches, presentations, and they also demonstrate very good listening skills. That's a big part of communication, is listening and observing, watching other people's body language. It's so hard as a podcaster. That's probably one of the biggest things I struggle with. I don't get body language back from you guys. I think when I say things or I listen to my own podcasts in the car, I oftentimes will react in a way, and I'll wonder if my listeners are reacting to the same things I am. And I would guess many times they are, but other times I'm like, I wonder if they caught that. Did I express that exactly how I'd intended and hoped to? You know, so sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I think I would probably struggle communicating with people who have the naturalist intelligence. These folks that are that can discriminate among living organisms as well as understand the relationships among them. But maybe I can communicate with those, and maybe I'm just thinking too narrowly about how they see nature, and I'm not including humans in that nature. So people who understand like sociology are probably a naturalist. Um, they can discriminate through the human capacity, like through evolution, uh, evolutionary past, let's say. And they play like this fundamental role for it, this would be something fundamental for people that are maybe botanists and that can look and see how things develop over time. There's a big discussion about GMOs lately, these um, genetically modified organisms. Folks, we are genetically modified organisms. So are dogs. Uh, most things in this world have some sort of genetic modification happening with them over time. Um, I'm not sure what the concern is. I'm sure there's some concern over, what we're doing with reducing the number of available let's think about tomatoes for one thing. The amount of tomatoes that were once commercially available, or people were planting, varied greatly. There were well over 100 different varieties of tomato that happened on a regular basis that were just kind of naturally happening out there. And then as farms, factory farms, start producing these very specific tomatoes that develop quicker and can stay fresh longer. I get that. I'm not ignorant to that, but at the same time, everything everything develops over time. The corn you eat is not the maize that we encountered um, as Europeans coming across the Atlantic. It was a very different corn. I hesitate to even call it corn. And we have modified that over time to make it more consistent, to make it sweeter, to make it um, fuller, to make it more consistent in the production of it, to make it fall within the seasons that are available to grow it. So um, these naturalists, these people that have that ability, it's a fundamental role that we need. Um, we need these folks that understand that. Chefs are a great example that they can. I was at the meat market today. Sorry, I'm kind of all over the place, but just thinking about this cut of meat I was looking for. They didn't have any top sirloin, so I was asking for what's the next cut that would go well on a grill. And the butcher very quickly went to his next go-to and offered it up. And dude, I'll be honest, I have no idea what it was. I just trusted him. This guy's the pro, not me. And he gave us a select piece of meat and for us to grill, and we went on our merry way. So these folks understand that stuff. The kids that get excited about going to field trips to the labs, to laboratories, or just going over and doing some sort of lab assignment. They are the people that are someone who has a very naturalist education, or not education, but intelligence. You know, um, and this was actually added to the original list. There were seven intelligences that Gardner first described in his book Frames of Mind, or essay Frames of Mind, 1985. So this is something that was added later on as he started to get a better understanding of his own theory. And there's this existential intelligence that comes along for the people that have people that pose and ponder questions about life, death, ultimate realities. A couple weeks ago, I was talking about the meaning in life, and I've had a couple of pastors on that are exploring, a spiritual life as well, and helping others find their best lives through religion. And you know these people that enjoy deep thinking and questioning, and are curious about the ultimate realities, are folks who have this existential intelligence. And oddly enough, like, I see, as I go through this, I feel more and more connected to each one. um Maybe not so much the naturalist, but I also do, because I'm very interested in my own heritage and my own lineage. You know, um, Gardner was greatly influenced by Eric Erickson and Jean Piaget and uh, Jerome Bruner. These are folks that influenced him and allowed him to come up with these multiple intelligences. And so as we look at finding different skills, different strengths, different ideas, um, think about your own life and the think about your own life and the way you learn, the way the things you get excited about. We don't all learn the same way, you know? And with that in mind, why should we all be taught the same way? I've sit in classrooms where all I heard was blah, 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 blah. And it's not because I wasn't interested. Well, it probably was because I wasn't most interested. I'll say most interested, but it's because that may have not have been my strength, my intelligence, you know, my intelligence strength. Um, I, I feel like I'm, I don't, man, I don't remember many times where I didn't enjoy a good lecture unless it was from my dad, and no one enjoyed those lectures. Um, I'd sure like to have one right now, though. I wish he were here. But just one size certainly does not fit all when it comes to this. And if you're thinking about, what smarts you are, um, do you really like books? You know, do you like to do experiments? Do you sing songs that you've heard on TV to yourself and going somewhere and making up lyrics to go along with them? Those are different things that can allow you to, are you good at making and figuring out patterns? Do you like doing puzzles? Are you good at reading maps? These are all components. Do you like to be outside? Are you that naturalist that likes to be outside? Are you good at learning new sports or dances? Do you like to move around a lot? Do you like to be in tune with with other people, like being in the middle of a crowd? Which is interesting because Jennifer really enjoys being in the crowd. When we go to a concert, she absolutely loves music, but she's very introverted. But when it comes to going to a concert, she really likes being in the mix of things. And she has told me God, she's gonna hate me for talking about her, but I can't help it. I love the lady, but she's told me that she feels invisible in that space where she can be free and other people are doing the same thing. So it's not like she's the only one, and I totally get that. Um, do Are you someone that keeps a diary or a journal or write down your feelings? Um, all of these different things uh, can explain the type of intelligences you may have. If you like to spend time alone and to be by yourself, those are pieces of it. It takes some time to look at Howard Gardner. Take some time to get a better understanding of his multiple intelligences, and find some takeaways that make sense in your life. Maybe start with one, look at it and go, "Oh, that one's interesting. I want to know more about that." You know, I I simply did this podcast to try and make some pretty complex psychological concepts accessible to a broader audience. I've tried to be informative, engaging, and spark some interest in how people learn and achieve success in various ways. I hope you have gotten something from it. It's something that I've been thinking about for quite a while, probably for the past year that I've been doing this podcast. I've wanted to talk about um, some of these different things that I've learned along the way that have helped me get a better understanding of who I am, what excites me, and how it's improved my life. Just just being aware. I think I've said this many a times. I don't know if I've really talked about it a lot on the podcast, but had a lot of experiences before I went to college, before I got my undergrad, and before I got my master's degree, that I had a lot of experiences in life that as I went back to school, I was able to study and learn about the same experiences that I'd already had. And the only thing was, now I was learning that there was theory behind it, there was science behind it, there was names for these different components of life that I had experienced. And that I knew as truths, or at least I thought I knew as truths. And now I had some confirmation that came along with it. So if you're one of those folks that, you're like, I think I just think differently than others. You probably do. And this might be something for you to look into to get a better idea of um, what piece of Gardner's multiple intelligences theory you fall into. And listen, you're going to reach out, and there's going to be some other readings you can find that are like, oh, he's full of crap. It's not, what he thought is not this, that, or the other. That's up to you to decide. I happen to find a lot of um, interesting things in the eight intelligences. I think that um, people do have these different intelligences that are innate within them, and those things shine through. You we may get locked into some other things at some time. We also have intelligences in, but I also believe that eventually you start to discover more and more about yourself and get a much better understanding of what you are good at, what you are great at. Find those things that you're great at and really dive into them. Get excited about them. Really explore them and expose yourself to as much influence on those things as you can and become the best version of you. Guys, that's all I've got for today. Thanks for listening to me. I appreciate you. Do the whole like and subscribe thing. And go back and listen to all the other episodes. Some of y'all are a little bit behind. I've been listening in and just keeping my nose down, trying to get a feel, but I can see some of you are behind and need to go back and re-listen to some and get caught back up. There's time. There's time. Even adding in the Steve Hurd Wednesday for 30 minutes, you still have time. You've got that car drive. You're getting ready to go on a trip, go on a bike ride. We've been biking lately. I might have to talk about that sometime. Oh man, I've already went over. This is another one of those Southern goodbyes. Bye everybody. Thank you.